Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome at this nice webinar. It's a three-part expert talk series, Unlocking Global Talent. And this part is focusing on navigating international rules and regulation on D&I. And first, I would like to introduce myself. I'm Marjan Stoit, commercial manager at Undutchables, happily working at this company already for 25 years plus. And today we guide you through this webinar. And first of all, let's talk about Undutchables. So for the next slide. Oh, maybe it's good. So that's why it's good to mention to keep yourself mute. And I know it's lunchtime, so have your sandwich and everything fine. And if you have questions, you can use the chat. And then we can talk about that in the webinar. And when the webinar is finished, we will share the content. So that's also good to know. And of course, working for Undutchables already for 25 years, I want to talk about Undutchables. So that's what we do. We're a specialized agency based in the Netherlands, expert in connecting multilingual international professionals with Dutch and international companies in the Netherlands. And of course, D&I is our core value. Our view on diversity and inclusion is clear. We believe that diverse and inclusive themes drive innovative results. And since the beginning, we have been committed to create opportunities for international talents and helping companies in the Netherlands building stronger, more dynamic teams by embracing different perspectives, cultures, and background. We believe that it's not always as simple as it sounds. Building a diverse team is about much more than just bringing a new diversity hire every once in a while. It requires focus, attention to create a company culture that embraces inclusion, aligns with company values, and promotes the strengths of each individual. So therefore, this webinar, we share all the knowledge together with Wendy, who I will introduce later. So, the D&I imperative in a global market. Remote and hybrid working is, of course, the new normal. Teams operate across cultural, legal, and geographic boundaries. Inclusive experience is needed for all employees. D&I is not just nice to have, it's something essential and urgent for organizations to succeed, especially in today's global interconnected world. Compliance, you also need to be compliant with the international labor laws. And of course, it's a hot topic, so we discuss everything today. D&I, from ethics to strategy, it's now a strategic necessity. Our organization must navigate diverse cultural norms, legal mandates, and evolving societal expectations, and success requires informed and proactive strategies. So it's really good to get your head around that as a company. Global workforce, and you have local realities. The challenges of managing D&I globally is the legal variation, the cultural sensitivities, and the key goal must be ensure that every employee feels respected, valued, and included anywhere in the world. Why D&I compliance matters? To avoid risks as legal fines, lawsuits, and reputational damage, operational bans, and certain regions, because all the rules and regulations are different, of course. Uphold integrity and build a strong employer brand, and boost your employee morale, innovation, and cross-border collaboration. So today we work together with Wendy Broersen. We have a proud partnership between Undutchables and Superpeople Company. Wendy Broersen is international D&I expert, founder of Superpeople Company, and award winner, author, and university lecturer. Later on, she will continue with this webinar. Yes, our shared mission. Undutchables and Wendy. We help companies build inclusive international workplaces, equip leaders with tools for meaningful and measurable D&I progress, drive environments where everyone feels seen, valued, and empowered to thrive. So, Wendy, I give the word to you, and I would like to hear more about your tools and about your tips for everybody. Thank you. Enjoy.
Well, thank you so much for that nice introduction. So I prepared a presentation. It's going to be a mini introduction of me and then a lot of information, but also best practices and tips and tricks. So without further ado, I want to start sharing my presentation. Yes. So in case you're wondering, you're in a presentation about navigating international rules and regulations on DEI. And for those of you who are not familiar with the term, that stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And there's been a lot of media attention to this topic, and I will shortly address that as well. So in case you're wondering, Superpeople Company works across borders as well. We have clients all throughout Europe and a little bit outside of that, but mostly in Europe. And these are a couple of the brands that we work for. But you're not here to hear me talk about Superpeople Company. We are here to talk about these topics. And I split them into 5 mini topics. So this is the agenda for today. We're going to be talking about Trump and, well, not so much about the person Trump, but his decree on DEI. Let's not talk about the person. And we're going to be talking about international DEI strategies, what works, what doesn't work, and what are basically the boundaries that you have to navigate within. We're going to be talking about cultural sensitivity because it's very much needed, and especially in this setting, of course. We're also going to be talking about how you can become a safe haven. And lastly, but not we're going to be talking about creating an inclusive culture in hybrid or remote settings, because I know, especially if you're working internationally, you're going to do a lot of remote working in hybrid situations or fully remote, and it's a common misconception that you cannot create an inclusive culture when you work fully remote, for instance. But I hope to trigger your imagination and with some best practices on that as well. So without further ado, I want to start with addressing the orange elephant in the room, I would say. See, because of the decree, which actually he already announced in November and became reality in January of this year, he announced that anybody who wanted to do business with the USA government had to let go of their DEI strategy. And to be exact or more precise, he talked about letting go of diversity, I would say KPIs, and also let go of special programs, allocating means and budget and all that to underrepresented groups. Specifically, he talked about doing that for groups that differentiate because of race, of gender, of age. I mean, anything that is sort of like a personal characteristics, and if you would have a policy or a program running specifically on those specifications, you cannot run them anymore. Well, it started a huge media frenzy because we're not used to that coming from the USA, right? I mean, they've been front runners on this topic for a very long time. And all of a sudden, I've heard people refer to the Stone Ages. So this is very interesting, and it's also very it's a reality that we're not used to. But the USA, Trump, is not the only one that does that. There are so many countries out there that have rules and regulations tied and laws tied to personal characteristics. Just pointing out that being gay, for instance, is punishable by law in over 100 countries and punishable by death in still a lot of countries as well. So it's not the first country that does it. It is a first that, being so front running on one time and then all of a sudden, changing that much was a surprise to most. I've actually seen this coming a little bit from the United States because there have been signs, a lot of signs. I have good contacts there, and for the companies that we work for, they have entities in the United States as well, and I've seen already laws being accepted and also laws being proposed in many of the states in the United States, and they have been tied to personal characteristics. For instance, people that are trans. We've seen the last sorry new law in the UK on regards of trans as well. So it's a big thing, but there are many countries that are doing this. By the way, as Miriam said, please interrupt me. Just unmute yourself and ask me a question if you have one, or if you want to add something. I think if we have some interactive activity going on, it will definitely improve the content of this webinar. And don't forget, there are positive and negative rules and regulations. For instance, in Spain, they have rules and regulations for companies around gender equality. And that has given a great push on creating more gender equality in Spain. And sorry to say this, people that are from the Netherlands, we are not top on this, on rules and regulations, yes, but on upholding those rules and regulations, we're not really good at it. And I was maybe it's a surprise to you as well that Spain is actually doing on gender equality. They're doing now better than us. So rules and regulations are one, upholding them are another. I must say, in the Netherlands, we have great laws, rules, and regulations. We're not so good at holding them, so unfortunately, this society is not getting the benefit of that. It is impossible. I'm sorry, spoiler alert. It's impossible to create an inclusive DEI strategy and policy for your company, abiding by all those rules and regulations. There's just too many differences between the rules and regulations and laws in all those countries. So it's become a challenge to create a DEI strategy that you can implement in all the entities that you have, especially when you have them in all different countries. And it's also changing a lot, and especially the last couple of years. So I would love to point you towards a resource where they have an updated version of all the rules and regulations around this, but unfortunately that is not the case. And me and my team, we started with it and not even finished, we already were confronted with changes, so we stopped doing it. And this is our go-to strategy. We ask the people in the country, and especially the people in the country that you know, these rules and regulations and laws have an effect on. And trust me, they will know. And especially if you have an ERG, which is an employee resource group, which is usually a group of employees that sort of united to make sure that their interests were met within the organization, and those are the people that are usually a little bit activist, which is really nice because they are usually the people that know best about these rules and regulations. So we diverted to that strategy beginning of last year, and I must say it's been proven very resourceful. Those people in your company, and the upside on asking them is that they also feel much more engaged and connected to the organization. So it has a plus on both sides. They know exactly what you're looking for and feel included just because you're asking. Anybody have questions about this part? And then I'm going to move to the next part. So we're going to be talking about international DEI strategies. And like I said, it's impossible to create one that will fit all. And not even in Europe. So you'll think Europe, oh, maybe there's sort of like a common ground, but unfortunately, no. But that is actually up to you. Every international organization that I know of have created their own standards, their own DEI strategy, their own mission and vision. What does an inclusive organization look like? And dove into the specifics, and usually they stick within wherever the head office of the organization is to create a standard. And that is more than just mission and vision. It's also, it has to do with equity programs, it has to do with policies, it has to do with benefits. All that is created as a standard, and then you move from there into an international approach. So you cannot do a lot of things, especially the ones who are in the benefits and the rules, in the policies. You have to buy the rules, laws, and regulations in every country. So there is an adaptation needed of your standard, but that should only be because of laws, rules, and regulations. So as a company, you can create a company culture, and that company culture should be set by you all and not by laws, rules, and regulations. That would be like a second filter that you use per country. And if there are laws, rules, and regulations that hinder you in what you feel fair and is inclusive, then look at what you can do and not focus on what cannot be done because of those laws, rules, or regulations. So I'll give you an example. If being trans is illegal in a country, I know of countries that would help their employees if they let know the organization that they would like to transition, for instance. I know of companies that would actually bring those people to another country, give them a job there where it's legal. They can go through the whole transition, and then they can decide if they want to go back or not. Another example is sorry to say, the US again. If you, in half the states in the United States, it's now illegal to have an abortion. I know of actually a lot of companies that are facilitating their employees to have that abortion if they want to, and they facilitate on travel costs and health benefits because they feel it should be equal for all, and not just because they have an entity in a state where they feel it's a right, and so it's in their standards, and they move around to facilitate that. Be mindful, though, that some of the topics will be very relevant and in one country and non-existent in another country. I'll give you another example. For instance, part-time work is in the Netherlands and in Switzerland. It's high on the agenda, and it's very, very important. I can tell you that part-time work in other countries is not as relevant. So it really matters. In Spain, for instance, there's only a small percentage of Black people. And so in the general focus in Spain won't be on Black people. It will be on people of color, but not on Black people. Whereas in the Netherlands or in the UK, for instance, there's much bigger population of Black people, so it obviously they have much more focus on that. I'm not saying that you shouldn't. I'm just stating that if you want to engage the people that work for you and be there and make sure that you're not the only one trying to push things, you have to be as relevant as possible, and with relevance engagement. They're sort of like intertwined. Also, working women, for instance, in Eastern European countries, it used to be communist. It's everybody works. There's just very, very normal to them. And it's really weird if you want to push an agenda on all women working because they're already working. So it's per country. You have to be mindful of what's important for them, mindful of the population and the local representation of underrepresented groups. And it could also be that an underrepresented group in a Western European country is a majority in another country, of course. So it makes sense that you set a general DEI strategy and standard, and then adapt that standard to what is relevant per country. The basic, of course, not. So does anybody have a question about that? You're very quiet, all of you.
Yeah.
Whether you may be eating, and but I would love to hear some thoughts about this. Is there anybody who has already adapted an international approach? Am I talking nonsense to that person or very relevant? Maybe?
I think it's very clear, Wendy. Oof. But if somebody would like to step in, you can.
Or share a best practice, maybe.
I mean, I can make a comment. I'm from an American company. We have about 4,000 employees. We're based in Iowa, headquartered in Iowa, but we have our headquarters for Europe in Amsterdam. And one of the things that we've experienced, me being a leader of a ERG, but also a people manager, is that lots of our DEI policies, even though they tried to have an international focus, they're ideated by Americans. So there's this disproportionate focus on the Black community and the Hispanic Latino as an ethnicity, whereas we have a lot of Spanish employees here. I'm from Argentina as well, so I'm technically Latino. But we don't have that problem of Hispanic and Latino people being discriminated for their ethnicity here, or like having like less access to opportunities. And it's a very difficult conversation to convince the global leadership team of, you have the wrong focus, in the sense of, we have an Asian Berg. It's Berg because it's Business Employee Resource Group. And we have it in Singapore too. And it's like, it's not a minority there. So like all of the things that you just touched on, it's like very real for me.
Yeah, it's a perfect example of being a little bit too hung up on your own standard, and which is fine in the country that you're in, but it can be totally irrelevant in another country. So yes, of course, you want to create a standard that is like as all inclusive as possible, but be very mindful of the region or the country that you're in, that you're also implementing this in, because like he stated, there are differences, and it's really hard to be engaged on something that you feel is not an issue or not even relevant to you. Relevance really is like I said, a prerequisite almost to be engaged in a topic or in a theme. So thank you for sharing. I felt a little alone, so thank you so much. Also, because I can't see you all, I'm looking at my presentation and already seen it before, so this is why I asked you to be a little bit more interactive. We're going to be talking about cultural sensitivity. Obviously, I already touched upon the topic, but be mindful if you bring people from a specific cultural background into another cultural background and into another culture. They will bring their cultural background and also the stereotypes and the unconscious bias that comes from, which is tied to that cultural background. They will bring that with them, and it will make them, well, on the positive side, it will make them wonder or be very curious why things are different in their new environment. But it can also create confusion, lack of engagement, and like I said, if you come from a country where it's illegal to be gay, obviously you don't hear a lot of gay stories, you don't see a lot of gay couples, and it will, so your general knowledge about gay people might not be as elaborate as people from a culture where it's totally accepted, and actually very, very, well, I hate the word normal, but very common sight, and it's also assumed that you have that knowledge, which is also, I always say, excuse my language, assumption is the mother of all fuck ups, but in this case it really is. So it makes sense that if you bring somebody from another culture into your own culture, to educate these people, to let them know what the standards are, what the general belief around these topics is, and hopefully create a little bit more of an open perspective with that person. And coming from a cultural background also creates exclusion. I haven't met an expat yet that felt at one time or another felt excluded, especially when the majority where they live or where they work is native. It really has an effect on people if you feel excluded, but there's stuff that you can do, of course, about that. But exclusion is a really important factor, because obviously if you feel excluded, it's going to be hard to work on inclusion, and it's not their job either. It should be actually of the majority the job to make sure that people feel included. So to get to that realization should be, especially when you work across borders. And if you have a lot of expats working for you, that actually should be top in your strategy and action plan, because it costs a lot of money to bring people over, and it costs them a lot as well, because they have to leave their home country, they have to leave most of the time their family, and then coming to an environment where they feel excluded. That's not going to be very beneficial, not for them, but also not for the organization, and definitely not for the society that they are now part of. So be mindful of that. Have a cultural sensitivity around what is normal for you or regular for you. That often is not the case of people that come from another country. And yes, especially for the Dutch people in this workshop, Belgian people have a very different culture as well, although they almost speak the same language. Aside for a couple of words. I see you laughing, Marjan. That is very true, right?
Ja, het is Vlaams is ook Nederlands, toch? Toch
Yeah,
wel. Ja,
it is, but
het zijn totaal anders. Ja.
definitely a very, very different culture.
See? Don't understand it speaking Dutch. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Try to be Belgian. Was a
I
joke.
must say,
Yeah.
yeah, of course. No, it's a language is one, but also external visual symbols of inclusion are often misunderstood as well, because color, for instance, is also people have a different association with colors if you're from a different culture. And the most common one that probably everybody knows about is the color white, which has a totally different association in Asia if you compare it to Western Europe. One is virgin, is novel, is new in Western Europe. That's also why it's used for wedding dresses. And white in China, for instance, is a color of mourning. Although I must say you see a lot of white wedding dresses now in China, but that's a different story. I sort of throw that to the internationalization that's going on. Anybody wants to ask me questions about this or share a personal story?
It's not a question, but just from personal story of moving myself to the Netherlands as an expat. I think something that my company did that really helped was offering language classes.
Yep.
And that was a way to really learn about the culture, because the language is such a big part of the culture that then you can be a part of and also join in on. So I think that really helps in giving these tools to the employees that they can use to join in.
And is the language spoken, is that English in the company that you work for?
It's actually
and where
English.
Are you from? Can I ask?
I'm from Poland. Yeah.
Poland. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So if you want to feel included, that doesn't just mean your workspace, it's also your private space.
Yeah, I think they did a very good job in offering these classes, so you do feel more included in the country already in the when you're moving here, and you can become more part of the society. Of course, at work we do use English, but I think it also raises awareness for all the different languages in the office, and everyone can learn from each other, and it is then a space of celebration of the different languages. So
yeah, I've seen great examples of celebrating the different cultures where everybody comes from. I've seen potluck. I don't know if you know it, but there's this, you bring a dish or a cake or something that is very typical from where you are from. And I always say food connects, because it's a great way to socialize with each other, and because everybody basically has to eat, and it's a great way to experience a little bit of the culture of the colleagues around you. But there's all kinds of other ways to do this. I've seen around the Islam culture is now a lot of focus on, and at the end of Ramadan there's and in general there's a lot of focus on cookies. And what I know of a company that invited, whether you're Islam, whether you are of the Islamic religion or not, I invited everybody to bake cookies, specifically related to wherever they were from. And so there was a Cookie Monster would have been in heaven, because there was mountains of cookies. But it also led to exchanging recipes, to explain what that cookie cultural, much of the cultural cookies had a cultural background. So you eat them at a special occasion, or the ingredients were very much intertwined with the culture that they were from. So it led to it started with spontaneous action of somebody, and it led to a very international, very inclusive cookie frenzy. I wish I'd been there, because I'm a big fan of cookies. But it's a nice way to include that.
Nice, yeah. There's a question in the chat.
Yeah, go for it.
How do you suggest to create an inclusive culture for one or two people from abroad in the Dutch culture, apart from just being sensitive or aware?
Ooh. So if I understand correctly, so please unmute. Can you paint me a picture? So it's a large group of Dutchies and one or two from another country?
Yeah, so you spoke about this before, and if there's an international environment, the most people speak English, then kind of naturally people start speaking English, like at the lunch table or other areas. But what if most people are Dutch, and then you've got one or two people, from abroad, even US or UK or wherever. People tend to speak Dutch.
Yeah, they do.
if the other person is also Dutch,
right? Yeah.
So that means the people that do not speak Dutch, they cannot join in the conversations. They feel, excluded. Of course, you can do all kinds of fun things, but how do you have a suggestion how to create this culture if most people are Dutch?
Yeah. So just to be sure, just to be clear, so the professional language is English or not?
It depends on the department. There's Dutch and English departments.
Well, so the company or the organization is split into, like, say, an English part and a Dutch part.
Yeah, but the people in the office are mostly Dutch.
Yeah. Okay. Well, first of all, when something happens like this, and I've been in companies that are in transition and they lack a lot of people, so what they did, they hired people from elsewhere.
Exactly.
And so they had to divert to a professional language being English. Otherwise, that was the easiest way to do it. If you want to make those people from abroad feel more included, obviously Dutch lessons, and somebody else already stated that Dutch lessons are essential, even if the workplace is English and everybody speaks English at all times. Another thing that really, really helps is to, and I've seen this happen, but also suggested it and it really worked, is to create buddies. A buddy system is the best way to integrate people as much as they can, and a buddy is a buddy not only in the workplace but also in the informal work situations. That buddy, it really helps if that person has a connection to the country where that person is from, ideally, of course, but it really helps if that is the case, and that buddy will be their buddy for at least a year. It sounds really long, but the buddies can pick their own partners, so the people that are like from another country, they can pick them themselves, and the buddy system really, really works because they will invite them to sit down for lunch. They will invite them to, they will help them to master the Dutch language, which is a nightmare, I must say. It's not the easiest language to learn. I would say it's one of the most difficult ones to learn.
I agree.
Yeah. We have exceptions to exceptions to exceptions. Yeah. So I'm really happy that I'm Dutch, a native Dutch person, because learning this language would curl my hair, I would say. So the buddy system really works. Another thing to do is to make them storytellers. Let them share how they experience their new life, or make them share on where they are from. When people are more connected, there's also and they know each other better, there's also more of an openness and acceptance to connect more. It's easy to ignore somebody on the street that you don't know, I always say. But if you meet somebody on the street that you went to school with, you cannot help yourself, but you're gonna reach out to that person, or at least give them a wave and say hi. So making sure that they interact and get to know each other really, really well, that is, I would say, the basis of them being included. Did I answer your question with something that you can use?
Some food for thought. Yep.
Yeah, it also requires an openness, of course, from the Dutchies. And not everybody will be as open, but it is contagious, because if somebody opens up to that person and has a really pleasant experience with that person on a personal level, they will invite them, like, say, to birthdays, to professional settings more, because they got to know that person more, and they know what they are worth, and what they have to bring to what they can bring to the organization. But in order to appreciate somebody, you have to know them better.
Yeah,
And maybe some Dutch people also feel insecure to speak English, right?
Of course.
In front of other people.
I actually know of companies that have more than one or two. They offer both courses. So, and sometimes they even make them mandatory. So they offer English courses and they offer Dutch courses to whomever one feels they need. And that really works as well. But thank you for that add-on. I do appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Okay, so
now I was going to make a quick comment. I mean,
yes,
you actually addressed a lot of the things that I wanted to talk about, but I appreciate your approach to that, strategies of integrating expats, because I'm part of a network where we get together with other companies. It's called the Pride External Networks. It's arranged by Unilever and Nike mainly as the sponsors in a way. And one of the things that we've observed is that companies where the majority is Dutch, they tend to put too much focus on integration by ways of assimilation and tolerance, which is not celebrating diversity, and it's not giving people the space to be. It's like, oh, you need to become more Dutch so that we can tolerate you. And I think that your approach is like very sensitive, and I really appreciate that, because I'm a manager of like multiple expats, and when I hear their horror stories from past companies, occasionally we like, for instance, Dutch leadership, and they're like, well, you need to adapt to the way that we do things here. It doesn't matter your cultural background. And I was like, yeah, sometimes it's challenging as well, because you might have a group that is not as open to change, and they don't see the value in the diversity or the openness to, maybe they have ideas and maybe their experience is valid, and it like actually can drive change in better ways than if you just like stay in your echo chamber of, you need to become like us.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah, I always say, if you don't hear every voice in the room, well, you have to. You're going to miss out on a lot, and we actually, in my organization, we have a rule that if nobody is asking any critical questions, we park the topic and create a new meeting for it. But it cannot be that anything that we bring to the table is at the first attempt perfect. It's just not possible. When you have diversity in your team, it's there must be somebody that has a different idea or an add-on or critical questions that would bring and drive whatever is on the table to a much more elevated something, depending on what it is, of course. But and that takes effort, and that's not always possible, or, well, it's always possible, but not always everybody wants to do the extra mile to get there. And I must say, if there is pressure, time pressure, deadline pressure, or any kind of other pressure, people will divert to their to their automated ways. And everybody does that. It's because you automated a lot of things, and that's not very beneficial, unfortunately. So I always say deadlines and stress are DEI killers, and especially inclusion killers. Because you need time to reflect and to think, okay, I'm thinking this, but maybe I shouldn't act upon it, and ask a couple of questions. The funny thing is that inclusion can be triggered by being curious, and our minds cannot be judgmental and curious at the same time. So whenever you find yourself in a situation where you're thinking, oh, they're like this, or oh, that person is like that, or any assumption that you're making about any situation, if you start to ask questions, not judgmental questions, of course, but like open questions, you'll get your mind out of that preset judgment, and I'd love to hear next time, because we're going to do it next time, what that brought to you, because it changed my life when I heard this from scientists and decided to try it out. Okay, nice bridge to safe haven, I think, because I'm trying to be mindful of the time and I still have content left. When you are an international organization or you work in an international environment, like I said, there's laws, rules, and regulations that might not be compliant with your DEI policies. There is the possibility to become a safe haven for the people that these laws and rules and regulations are harmful for. I already gave a couple of examples. ERGs are also a really nice way to foster a safe haven. And monitoring globally on how people are doing and how they are experiencing certain kinds of inclusion is a great way to do that. And obviously, when you deal with a country where it's illegal to be gay, I'll give you that example again. You cannot send out, well, you can, but it's not going to resonate very well, and people won't fill it in. You cannot send out surveys on where you have to fill in your how you perceive yourself and how you identify. There's even different rules and regulations on that per continent, because in the EU, for instance, a lot of things you're not allowed to ask, only voluntarily, and there's rules around that. It's called the GDPR and AVG in Dutch, and they're very different from what you're allowed to ask in, like, say, a country as the United States. But there are ways to do this, and I'll give you a brilliant example. Okay, it's Accenture, don't get me wrong. Accenture actually did well, interpreted the decree by Trump in a not so nice way, I think. But they have a great way to monitor, for instance, the impact on inclusion and on awareness around LGBTQ community, for instance. What they do is they send out a survey of a couple of questions, and they are questions like, do you see how many people are attending these events? Do you see somebody posting about this? Is there interaction on those posts? Who is interacting with those posts? And so they have a set of, I think, 20 or 30 questions. They don't send it out to everyone. They send it out to the members of the ERJs and only a small group of them. And these people will monitor in their own environment the engagement on that topic. And so they found a practical way to deal with the rules and regulations around GDPR, but also around the rules and regulations in countries where it's illegal to be even part of this community. So there are ways to measure things, and if anybody is interested in it, on how to make DEI more measurable, there's a great book which is called Data-Driven DEI. It's a nightmare to read, fair warning, but it has brilliant examples on how to make your efforts around DEI measurable, and you'll be surprised on how much and how many things are measurable. I dare say everything is measurable. But that's room for another, that's actually a topic for a whole new webinar. So I'm not going to go into that. I'm almost, it's 5 minutes. Okay, I have to hurry now. So I made a list of how to create an inclusive culture anywhere, anytime. So obviously recruitment and selection processes have to be inclusive. And that means that you're going to search in and post in environments where you usually don't post, like, say, specific student bodies. There's lots of student bodies that are around, like, say, religion or background or country where they're from, or international students. They also are united in clubs and bodies, and those are perfect places to cast a wider net to catch a little bit more diversion. Their inclusive policies are really important, and there's lots of examples out there, but if you are in need of one or a specific topic, let me know and I'll help you. Visual confirmation. Yeah, a lot of people forget this. But if we are in meetings like this and everybody turned on their camera, which I know that not everybody did today, which is fine. You can use your backgrounds. You can use lanyards, which are the cords that you use to put usually an access card to on. There's buttons. AT&T, for instance, has a really pretty one. They used AT&T logo and they filled it up with the rainbow colors to and those lanyards and buttons you can they are used to identify as an ally, so people know that they are at least trying to be inclusive, and so that creates a little bit of extra safety there. With name tags you can do a lot, but also welcome packages and joint events. Make sure that you have a lot of visual confirmation there. ERGs, I mentioned them before. I think they are essential to create an inclusive company culture. Your meetings, did you ever look at your meetings? And most of the meetings, I don't know if you noticed, but most of your meetings, it's 2 or 3 people that say a lot, and like say out of 10, and there's 2 that maybe say something, and there's a couple that don't ever say anything. It doesn't mean that they don't have anything to contribute, but either the meeting is organized in a way that they don't have the time to reflect on the topics and form an idea or a contribution to whatever is on the table, because not everybody thinks and acts the same way. If they're and one of the tips that I can give you is make sure that you have a new way of learning how to learning about your colleagues, especially if you do a meeting like say once a month. We call them icebreakers, but you have all kinds of ways to run an icebreaker in a way that you can learn about these people more. Another way to create a more inclusive meeting is to alternate whomever is making the notes and whomever is chair of that meeting. It's an interesting way of doing it. I can highly recommend it. Learning and development. Not everybody learns it the same way, and not everybody deems themselves to be a talent. So you have to be more proactive on that as well. And lastly, but not least, transparency on wages, on promotions, how these processes work will definitely improve the representation of underrepresented groups in a higher tier in your organization. So there's not a lot of time, 1 minute left. Looking at the time, I'm going to stop sharing and I'll turn it back to Undutchables.
Great. Thank you, Wendy. It was very, very nice. And of course, we will share this presentation. And the next session will be in September the 23rd. As part 2 is retaining international talent management taken to another level. And if you scan the QR code, you can register for next time. And in November, it will be a live session, creating an exclusive company culture for international. More information is on our website, of course. And like we said, we share we share the presentation. And I thank you so much for joining us today. Hope to see you next time.
Yeah, and reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'd love to connect there if we're not connected yet. So
Me too.
Looking forward to the next time. And of course, have a really nice day today.
Have a nice day and hope to see you soon again. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.